attending. Next up is Mr. Holden with AB 915. Well, there's a motion and second. Mr. Holden, welcome to our meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'd like to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present Assembly Bill 915, a measure relating to public school employees. AB 915 would remove archaic and stringent travel restrictions.
Move the bill.
Thank you so much.
They're starting to vote already. I can't contain them. Everyone's making motions.
I'll make it quick. Call the vote. Existing law prohibits classified and certified employees who are on leave and receiving workers' compensation from traveling outside the state unless the governing board approves the travel. Circumstances may come up when an employee must travel outside the state to visit sick relatives, attend to emergency situations, or take care of emergency child care needs. School boards may not have sufficient time to call a meeting to approve the travel. AB 915 will align the Education Code with the Labor Code and remove unfair practices against school employees. This is a simple and straightforward bill, and I respectfully request your aye vote.
Those in support, this is the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Chair, Seth Bramble here on behalf of the California Teachers Association in strong support of Assembly Bill 915. CTA believes that the rules surrounding workers' compensation should not be more punitive for educators than for other workers in the state of California. I did want to introduce to you, I've brought with me the president of Redlands ESP Association. In CTA speech, ESP is our education support professionals, all of those classified staff who work so hard to make sure our students are learning, are safe, well-fed. And when he told me his story, I knew it was a story that lawmakers needed to hear. We certainly urge your aye vote. I'll let him introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Chair of Committee. My name is Dan Kivett. I am a supervising sergeant for the Department of Safety and Security for Redlands Unified School District. As Mr. Brumble said, I'm also the association president currently. This law came to my knowledge based on one of my own officers' personal involvement. He was injured on the duty and subsequently ended up on workers' comp requiring surgery. He's going through the rehabilitation, and the day prior to our winter break, he received a call from a family member in the state of Texas stating that his aunt was gravely ill and that he needed to get by her side. Through just a course of events, there was contact between him and the workers' comp administration people requiring some paperwork that they needed him to do. He asked if it was something that could wait until the following week. They said, yeah, it wasn't a big hurry. We just need to get our documents up to par. He said, okay, as soon as I get back from Texas, I will get him. I've got an aunt that's dying. I really want to go see her. At that time, he was advised that he was forbidden to leave the state of California. He subsequently called me as his president and as his former sergeant that oversaw him and brought it to my attention. I actually previously did workers' comp fraud investigation and said I know of no such law in existence. I started doing some research, couldn't find anything in the workers' comp or the labor law that stated such a case. I contacted my staff person, asked them to help me figure out where this is at and why. They subsequently couldn't find it, so they called legal services of CTA. They couldn't find it. I then had to call the district and ask them to request from the administrator the statute and where this law sits. Ironically, it's in the education code. Long and the short, in my district, as public safety officers for a school, not only do we encourage kids to obey the laws, we ourselves are bound to obey those laws that we enforce and the rules and regulations of that school board. My member was unable to leave. I was informed that there's no way to get a school board hearing together the day before a 3-week break and meet all the requirements. He didn't make it. It was from that point on where I made it my personal endeavor to make sure that such a discriminatory law that only applies to public school employees gets removed. No other public entity that I know of is bound by such a strict regulation and rule. There are laws for workers' comp fraud. There are laws in labor code that address fraudulent claims or misuse of the worker comp system, but yet there's a law that takes and one group of class of people, because we have chosen to make education in kids our best interest and our goal to serve them, that we are now set to be different than anybody else in this state.
Thank you, sir, for the summary. Anything else you want to add?
I just
We have detailed analysis on the background.
I just
the
encourage
legislative
this committee to vote in favor of changing this law.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Other speakers in support of this measure?
Thank you, Chairman and members. My name is Tristan Brown with the California School Employees Association. Keep it brief. We're in strong support of this bill, and we urge an aye vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mitch Seaman with the California Labor Federation, also in support.
Thank you.
Kendra Harris with the California Federation of Teachers in strong support.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers in support of this bill? Are there folks here who want to speak against this bill? All right. There's no one speaking against it. Are there questions by committee members? Questions or comments? If not, Mr. Holden, you can wrap up, please.
Thank you. I think the witness laid out the merits of the reason behind the bill, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. There's a motion and second. Actually, there were 5 or 6 motions and seconds. So we'll do a roll call vote.
Daly?
Aye.
Daly, aye. Beth Gaines? Aye. Beth Gaines, aye. Travis Allen? Aye. Travis Allen, aye. Calderon? Aye. Calderon, aye. Cooley? Aye. Cooley, aye. Cooper? Aye. Cooper, aye. DeBobney? Aye. DeBobney, aye. Frazier? Aye. Frazier, aye. Gatto? Aye. Gatto, aye. Gonzalez? Aye. Gonzalez, aye. Grove? Aye. Grove, aye. Mays? Rodriguez? Aye. Rodriguez, aye. It has 12 votes.
I think it was a unanimous vote. Well done. Well done, Mr. Holden. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Mainshine. AB 447. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members. Today I'm presenting AB 447 regarding insurance for properties with Section 8 tenants. Before I begin, I'd like to say that my staff and I have been working diligently with the opposition to try to come to a resolution over their issues. We're committed to continuing to do so and are open to contributions towards that end. And even though they aren't being heard today, I would like to say that we have decided to take amendments at the first opportunity to remove the method of financing portion and more clearly target tenants that are not owners of the property. The cost and unaffordability of housing in California has risen to record levels, with over 1/3 of tenants in California rent burdened and the cost of rental housing on the rise. Fewer and fewer options exist for low-income families and people living on fixed incomes. People with access to subsidized housing programs like the Section 8 voucher program have been priced out of most of the rental market by rising rents. Protecting the rental opportunities that remain affordable and accessible is critical to preventing homelessness for this vulnerable population. California law currently outlines a list of prohibitions that serve to protect not just tenants, but the homeowners and landlords who rent their property from discriminatory insurance practices on a number of bases. Despite these protections, it is still legal for an insurance provider to deny habitation insurance to a homeowner or landlord because one or more tenants receive subsidized assistance. Consequently, a landlord who wishes to rent their property to a low-income family participating in the Section 8 voucher program are at risk of losing important insurance protections for their property. This unfairly requires landlords to choose between protecting the investment interests they have in their property and their tenants, many of whom have been long-standing residents of their property. AB 447 would make it illegal for an insurance provider to deny habitation insurance to a property owner or landlord on the basis that a tenant or tenants of the property participate in the Section 8 voucher or some other low-income housing subsidy program. I have with me although we're waiting on one witness who missed their train. But I have with me Deborah Carlton from the California Apartment Association and Brian Augusta from the Western Center on Law and Poverty. And I believe John Bowders at least is on his way from Housing California.
Thank you, Mr. Mainshine. Just to clarify, the amendments that you are accepting, do we have copies of those?
Mr. Daly, so I don't believe the amendments were prepared in time. So we have worked, I believe, with your staff and others. Yes. So my commitment is the amendments that have been discussed, we will take at the next committee this goes to or before appropriate. But essentially, it's the financing portion that was the cause of some objection, and I'm committing that I will remove that before this, after this.
I know you've been. I know your staff. You and your staff have been working with our committee staff. Any other questions there to clarify?
It's either here or the floor or the Senate.
Right. So I think Mr. Mainshine is committing to do it at the next step.
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Good. Thank you. Those in support of the bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Deborah Carlton with the California Apartment Association. You know, CA believes and is constantly espoused the importance of state and federally assisted housing programs because we believe they play a very important role here in California. The Housing Choice Voucher Program, of which many of our members participate, know that it provides a valuable program to low-income tenants and bridges that gap between those who cannot afford to live and the cost of those providers of the housing. While CA believes that the voucher program should continue to be a voluntary program, especially for those who have the resources to participate, we do strongly recommend that our members participate in the program. We believe the bill is necessary because admitted insurers in California have refused to cover our members' properties when they accept vouchers, forcing property owners to seek significantly more expensive coverage from out-of-state providers. We, of course, have encouraged our members to participate and believe that this is a very important bill, especially for those providers here in California, and we strongly recommend your support today. Thank you.
And next in favor.
Good morning, Chairman and members. Brian Augusta on behalf of Western Center on Law and Poverty and the California Coalition for Rural Housing here in support of this bill. The real policy issue, as the Assembly member talked about, is the policy question of whether or not the presence of Section 8 voucher holders or other housing subsidies would be an appropriate basis for denying insurance on a property. And we think the right answer on that is that it should not be the policy in California. We have a severe housing crisis in this state, as you all know. And the Section 8 housing voucher program, as one example, brings about $300 billion in federal housing subsidies to assist us in addressing that problem in California. And CAA's members are a perfect example of that. Otherwise, market rate apartment owners who agree to help house folks in need of affordable housing, but a prohibition on insuring those kind of properties or increased costs discourages them from participating. The choice becomes whether or not to rent a Section 8 or face problems insuring your property, and many property owners will choose not to do so. So this is part of a debate that's going on throughout the nation and is including in California about what is the appropriate policy. We think this bill, particularly with the amendments proposed today by the Assembly member, strikes the right balance. We've been working very carefully with the insurance industry to make sure that we're narrowly focused on addressing the problem that we've just described. And we hope, as the bill moves forward, that we can continue those discussions and resolve the concern from the insurance industry. For those reasons, I would urge an aye vote.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Mainshine, your additional supporter?
Yes.
The train arrived. Welcome.
Thank you. The train was late. Just John Bowders, Policy Director at Housing California. I did listen to this running from the train here this morning, and we would just concur with our co-sponsors and the supporters that ask your aye vote for this bill and answer questions you have.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Gatto had a question, and then Ms. Grove.
So, Mr. Mainshine, if I understand your presentation correctly, you're going to be completely deleting the language that appears in section B1. This is 679.71 B1.
That's correct, Mr.
And
Gatto.
which has to do with financing, right?
That's correct, Mr. Gatto, yes.
Okay, so my question is on the section B2 in both section 72 and 71 of the bill, and that is you create this this inability for insurers to vet property owners based on the level of income of anybody residing in the property. And this does not just apply to apartment owners. This applies to anybody, including just single-family residences. I could see how that could be a little problematic, though, because during housing booms like we're in right now, and certainly during the last one, there were estimates that as high as 10% of people were buying properties to flip. There were some that were buying properties in a fraudulent manner and just walking away from the mortgage, and of course that would affect how a property is maintained from an insurance standpoint. Somebody who's buying a property to flip, someone who's buying a property to just make a quick buck and resell, might not have the same level of care for the property. They might let it deteriorate. And I could see that being relevant when you're trying to underwrite insurance. I mean, of course it's relevant what the level of income is. If you got somebody who's way in over their head and they're going to lose the house in 3 or 4 months, they're not going to take care of it. So I'm not sure why Section 2 is also still in the bill, and maybe you'd like to talk about that.
Sure. You want to start, and then I'll add.
Sure. Mr. Gatto, in response to your question, where that language appears, we have been in discussions with the insurers about addresses the issue that you're raising, which is to focus just on the source of income of renters and not of single-family owner-occupied housing. So if it was, if I understood your example, purchasing a home to flip it, they're currently the owner-occupant or the investor, but they're not renting the home. And we're not looking to vet their income. That's probably an appropriate thing to look at. But we're just talking about the renters.
Even for renters, though, I mean, I think what you're trying to get at is Section 8 subsidized renters, and that's that source of income, of course, is guaranteed because the federal government pays those vouchers, and as long as there's the United States of America, those properties will be adequately capitalized. But in the instance of even, there's these large investor pools. I mean, some of the big hedge funds, Carlyle and what have you, have bought tens of thousands of single-family homes in the Nevada desert and the Arizona desert. And there is, of course, an underwriting standard as to whether or not these vast portfolios are adequately capitalized with rental streams from people who are good renters. I mean, I just see that being something that people would care about, unless it is a Section 8 property. So, that's one thing. And then the second question I have is, in terms of enforcement, how would this be enforced? Are we creating a presumption? Are we, what happens if someone does not get the insurance they want and then they sue and they say, gee, I'm on one of my tenant or a portion of my tenants are on Section 8. You did not give me insurance. Now I have a cause of action.
The bill doesn't create any sort of new private cause of action, private right of action. It's heavily regulated by the Department of Insurance, so the complaints would go through through that process.
Okay, but I mean, whenever you enshrine something in law, of course, I mean, it does give an individual a right to bring a case, unless you specify that it doesn't. So I'm just concerned that we would be clogging up the courts a little bit. But look, if you're committing to take out Section 2 as well, or to amend Section 2, it might change things. That's the biggest cause of concern that I have, is just allowing insurers to check out the capitalization of a property or bundle of properties, because that does affect the maintenance, I think, of the property and things like whether it might be subject to a fire or to theft or any of these things. So I'm just curious if you're going to clarify that and what you're going to do.
So we've continued through last night and this morning to work on this. We removed what was probably the most objectionable part of it, and removed
which is Section 1.
Which is Section 1,
okay.
and probably removed, 90% of the opposition, at least on that. I will. I actually think your points are well taken. My preference would be to spend some time continuing to work on it and see if we can amend that section without sitting here at this exact moment and doing that. Would be my preference. Because we will continue to work on it. We have spent a tremendous amount of time on this, and I think we've come a long way from where we started. So I will pledge to continue to work.
Thank you, Mr. Gatto. Ms. Grove has a question or a comment, and then Mr. Cooley, and also Ms. Gaines. I have to go present a bill at approach, so I'm turning the gavel over to you for a brief time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair, I have some concerns, and this is really hard for me to do, especially with you, my colleague, but I think the way that I look at insurance, and I just have industry knowledge of insurance, so I look at insurance and I think that they price their product or agree to insure that product based on risk. I understand that you're using the Section 8 issue and the low-income housing and all of that, but, I mean, insurance companies price Section 8 housing as a risk just like they price the guy that drives a McLaren or a DeLorean that has 2 speeding tickets. He's more apt of a liability risk than you or I driving down the road. Or the homeowner who has property, that's not directly by a fire hydrant or, ranch property that can't be, they price that risk higher for obvious reasons. It's not close to water, the fire department or anything like that. So I have huge concerns overall because I agree with the way that insurance industries price or agree to insure a product. Some companies, insurance companies, won't insure certain companies under workers' compensation risk because it's too high of a risk for them, but that should be left up to the market to do so. So I have a huge concern about stepping into a free market system. I talked to industry. There are some people in the industry that will write Section 8 housing all day long because it is guaranteed by the federal government. And then there are others who don't want to do it because maybe for whatever reason it's not in their portfolio. So, and again, like I said, I don't see it as discriminatory because I see it written as a risk. I mean, they write business to make money, and if they can make money off of this from the federal government paying and guaranteeing these payments, I think they would do it all day long. And like I said, I put it to the same risk that, the multimillionaire that drives a $1 million car that gets a couple of speeding tickets, he would be a risk, I would think, and he would be priced or not insured based on that risk. So I have a concern about that. And then I applaud and I thank my colleague over here for asking those questions because I appreciate you taking the amendments on the finance piece, but I have real concerns about Section 2 too as well. So I find myself in a really weird position to lay off your bill because I really have concern with 2, and I don't see it as a discriminatory issue because I think insurance prices the market based on the risk, and that's what they do. And if they don't do that, then we find ourselves where insurance companies are filing bankruptcy and can't cover the risk in which people have paid for. So I think that's a double-edged sword there.
Let me address those in reverse order, if I might.
Sure.
I will continue to, we've taken, I think I've shown throughout this how committed I am to working with the opponents. We took out the portion that really had the major opposition. I will continue to work on that because Mr. Gatto raised great points. That isn't what we're trying to do. So I will continue to work on that. It's just that, obviously I can't do that at this exact my preference is not to do that at this exact time, is to continue to work on it. As regards to your first set of points, I guess where I would take issue with you a little bit on it is the examples you cite really are risk factors. Having a property next to a fire hydrant, for example, does lower the risk for that property. That's a real, genuine risk property. You're exactly right. Somebody who has a sports car with a number of speeding tickets and a number of accidents is a higher risk to the insurance company than somebody who drives a Volvo. So those are real risk factors. There has been nothing that indicates that somebody who has a Section 8 voucher is a risk factor. There's nothing. No one has cited any statistics or anything that shows that if I rent to a Section 8, somebody who gets Section 8, they are a risk of trashing the place. So I agree with you on risk factors. Fire hydrants, yep, speeding tickets, all those things are real risk factors. This is not a real risk factor.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for the author? Did we have a motion and a second?
No. Chairman?
We haven't heard from the opposition yet. This is an opportunity for the opposition to speak. That's okay. I was out of the room for a second and I missed that. This is an opportunity for opponents to explain why. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman, Steve Suchel, on behalf of the American Insurance Association. Our position on the bill is opposed unless amended, and we are gratified that the author has continued to work on amendments, and the bill has come a long way in its current form than it was originally introduced, and we'd also like to see further amendments. The biggest issue here is the fact that tenant mix and the presence of subsidized housing is, in fact, a risk factor. It's part of a mix of issues that insurers look at when underwriting, including location of property, the height of the property, the condition of the property, the quality of management. Underwriting is a very deep and complex, especially for commercial properties and commercial properties of subsidized housing. Not all subsidized housing presents risk factors, but it is a risk that needs to be looked into. And our opposition is primarily based upon the fact that we would like to continue to be able to underwrite and ask the questions and and express concerns about Section 8 housing or subsidized housing generally. There are companies that write admitted, non-admitted, surplus lines. Various companies write subsidized housing. The market provides it. It's available right now. So the issue of discrimination not being available is I don't think, an issue. But we would like to work with the author to continue to while identifying it perhaps as a concern, we wish to continue to use the presence of subsidized tenants or subsidized housing as a risk factor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members, Theo Pejos, representing the Association of California Insurance Companies. First of all, we'd like to thank the author for taking the amendments that he has committed to take. We believe that it does make the bill a little bit better, but we just like to add on top of what's already been said is, we all have personal beliefs in terms of how policies should be administered and who should get insurance and who shouldn't. But at the end of the day, what an insurance company is it's looking at experience. So we're looking at large volumes of claims data, and we have to, from there, derive certain risk patterns. So while all of us might agree that certain social policies are good and worthy to pursue on the one hand, on the other hand, we have to remember what insurance is. There was a healthy discussion here a moment ago regarding this bill as it relates to fire hydrants and Ferraris and other exotic cars. Well, those are the things that to you and I seem very obvious. If you look at large volumes of data, other patterns emerge, and it is those patterns in which we base our rates and whom we are going to insure. There is a non-admitted market for this exact type of product. We think that if you have a Section 8 housing project where the landlord has a particular high reputation of fewer claims than those in the same class, and that person will have an easier time getting insurance, will be able to get it more cheaply. But any type of reins on underwriting have to be debated and thought through very thoroughly because they do skew the market and they will overall affect our ability and our affordability for all of those people who maintain property in the state. So for those reasons, we'd urge your no vote at this time, but do hope that we can continue to work with the author. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pejos. Other persons in opposition to the bill?
Good morning. Sherry McHugh, representing the Pacific Association of Domestic Insurance Companies. We'd like to thank the author and his staff and the sponsors of the bill. We believe the amendments that the author has agreed to take at a future time go a long way towards addressing our concerns, and we are prepared to go neutral on the bill with those amendments. We would like to obviously continue to work with the author on what we're calling now Section 2. So we want to maintain that dialogue, but we are prepared to go neutral with the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Manolo Platine, Personal Insurance Federation. We're in the same boat as Ms. McHugh, prepared to go neutral. Thank you to the author and the sponsors. Just as a note, the PIF member companies do not ask this question from the residential side. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Erin Norwood on behalf of the Liberty Mutual Group. I just want to echo the statements that were previously made. Thank you to the author for all of the work done on this bill, and we will also go neutral. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers in opposition? If not, we'll go to member questions and comments. Mr. Mays.
I'm not sure that I heard. What are the increased risk factors?
First off, tenant mix is an important underwriting factor, and that includes among tenants, students, people on disability, elderly. So the identification of tenant risk is something that's important. It's not solely the presence of people who are in subsidized housing. There are subsidized housing can be indicative of other issues with respect to the quality of the structure. I have seen a HUD study that said in subsidized housing that their fire alarms weren't working or that they were missing, period. And so those are the kinds of things. It's not in and of itself. It's just indicative of other things. And the idea is the more information that the company has, the better it is able to underwrite the risk and price a product.
But what are they taking? What are the criteria then that they're taking into consideration? But I mean, is just their income level? Is it because these folks are poor that we're making the assumption that they're going to behave in a different way?
No, that's not the assumption. The assumption is the basis of the underwriting of the property. It's what is the property, and the tenant mix is important. Guests, risk factors, increased risk factors from liability accidents. It's not in and of itself the income of it's indicative of other things: location of the property, the condition of the property, the fire condition, a lot of other things going into that. So it's a question to ask and a question to ask deeper. And as I said, not all subsidized housing presents problems. So the other issue is that there is availability of the product. There's an appetite for the product in various companies throughout the spectrum.
If I can just take a shot at that, I think, we can sit here and try to figure out what the risk factors would be with someone who receives Section 8 subsidization, but that's what the claims pattern suggests. So, it's sort of doing people a disservice to sort of wonder why. But again, like I said in my testimony, is we look at claims data, we look at experience, and we underwrite from there.
And Mr. Mays, nothing in the bill prohibits them from taking all the risk factors into account. What it says is it is specific to Section 8. And so we have not been provided anything that shows that Section 8, people who are on Section 8 are a higher risk. That just by virtue of being on Section 8. Everything else is fair game to be looked at. Property location, all those things. As Ms. Grove pointed out, all those things are legitimate. Fire hydrants nearby, all those things, those are absolutely legitimate things to take into account. Clearly, somebody who has a property next to a fire hydrant would be less of a risk, obviously. So all those things can continue to be taken into account. Nothing inhibits the ability for an insurance company to take those factors into account.
That's where I respectfully differ with Assemblyman Mainshine. By including that provision in the bill, it does restrict the ability because it can't be considered in underwriting the way that I read the bill.
I'm sorry, what provision?
The provision.
We're talking about number
section,
2?
No. In the current bill, it would be Section 3, B3, on page 3, lines 9 through 15.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm looking, Mr. Chairman, at the April 29th version.
Mr. Mainshine, is that one of the potential amendments that is in play, or is it not?
Okay.
Just to clarify.
Yeah, I mean, we've made a commitment to to these gentlemen as well as the others that we would continue to work on this. The main one, obviously, was Section 1, which we eliminated. Section 2 still is something that we would work on, and to the extent we could work out Section 3, I'm willing to do. I'm willing to continue to work with them as well on that.
Again, just to the commitment by Mr. Mainshine is to work on amendments, which I think will be dealt with on the Assembly floor.
Yeah,
because that's the next stop.
Yeah,
just want to clarify that for everyone. Okay. What was that? Oh yeah. Mr. Cooley.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on this. I sort of understand what you're trying to do. I actually think that for your purposes here in California to amend these code sections almost create problems. A standalone rule that stated just what you want to achieve would be better, in a sense. I think when you look at 679.1, 679.2, or 7.1 and 7.2, these are very important code sections within the code generally. They are quoted elsewhere in the code, and there are certain consequences that can arise from these codes in other lines. There's sort of some complications of this language. The truth is the Unruh Act factors tend to be more readily ascertainable. Here you're down in the weeds on a factual question of whether or not you can even have an application that gets instant information. You're interested in the use that's put to it. The whole concept of insurance for human habitation. Insurance is organized by the peril that it insures. Insurance for human habitation is actually foreign to the insurance code. You don't find that in the insurance code. So we're sort of describing insurance not in terms of the peril, but in terms of some characteristic that's embodied in the risk. I just want to say that I understand where you're trying to go. I actually think a freestanding rule that tried to fit it within the framework of how insurance coverage typically gets referred to would allow you to state the outcome you're looking for, get sort of clarity without dragging in sort of ancillary issues that stir up underwriting and those sorts of things. And frankly, from that standpoint, to the extent you break new ground on this bill, it becomes something that would be more readily translatable to other states because so many state statutes on insurance are very similar. So the fact that we've pulled in a phrase that we can find in the civil code or the housing code and trying to say insurance relates to this is sort of vague and a little bit unclear, and I think creates complications for how it gets implemented. Even if you get down into the weeds and say, what 679.1 says, you're not going to fail to refuse to accept application or issue a policy to an applicant for that insurance or cancel it, except for reasons applicable like to persons of the characteristic. When you start trying to, strictly speaking, apply that language in 679.71, applicable to that characteristic, when you get into your income, I don't actually think it makes sense. I think that you have problems with how this works. I'm going to vote for it because I understand where you're trying to go. I actually just think that trying to draft that into these provisions instead of just a clear rule to state what you're trying to achieve and related it to lines of coverage that you're interested in, I think is a better route to go. And I'd be happy to work with you on that.
Thank you.
Ms. Gaines has a comment or a question?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate all the hard work that you've done with my staff and with consultant, and you're obviously committed to working with the opposition. I can't support it today, but I'm going to lay off. And as it goes on, if it goes on, then I look forward to working really hard with you on this too. So thank you.
And the chair's recommendation is to pass this so that Mr. Meinschein can work on the amendments and then at the next step. Ms. Grove has a question.
So I just have a question in defense of the author. Like, he doesn't need my help, but the opposition.
But the defense is appreciated, yeah.
The opposition stated that you had a problem with Section 3, and I look at Section 3, and he's amended everything out of Section 3 except for the statement that says this chapter shall not prohibit the use of the application for insurance specified in this chapter of a question asking for birthplace of the applicant. Why is that considered a risk, the birthplace of an applicant? I'm just asking.
That's not the issue.
As
a member, it's
what's the issue?
Top of page 3.
Oh, the top of page 3?
Yes. Lines 9 through 15.
Go back one page.
Yeah. Yes.
Section 1.
Yeah, it's actually Section 1 of the bill.
Oh, Section 1. Okay, you said Section 3, and
Yes.
I'm looking at 3.
Well,
Okay, so I apologize.
I was using some shorthand we've been using around the room. So, but it would be top of page 3, Section 1 of the bill, and lines 9 through 15 are the issues with respect to carriers' ability to use Section 8 or subsidized information with respect to underwriting.
I apologize. I thought you said Section 3, and I was looking at Section 3, and I needed an explanation of why you were questioning Section 3. Okay, thank you, sir.
I did. I was taking a shortcut. So.
That's okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. See you back. Ms. Gaines has to go to appropriations to present a bill. Do we need a motion and a second, please?
Move the bill. Second.
There's a motion and second. Mr. Allen has a question.
Thank you very much. I just want to say to the author that I agree with a lot of the comments that were made around the room. I think Mr. Gatto really spelled out some great ideas. I appreciate what the industry has to say. I've been in the insurance industry for 20 years. I very much understand pricing and risk factors, and I think Assemblywoman Grove had a great point too, which is regardless of the factor, insurance companies exist to underwrite business and ultimately hopefully derive a profit from that. So all risk factors, as were also mentioned in the underwriting process by one of the representatives for the opposition, are taken into consideration that are valid, and I think it's appropriate to the industry simply because we need the industry to be healthy, to be able to actually accurately underwrite risks, which keeps the price low for everyone, and then it keeps insurance companies in the marketplace as well. So I think those were great points that were brought up. I thought Assemblyman Cooley had an interesting idea as to how this might be implemented in the most efficient manner. But I have seen where you've come to on the bill. I have seen the amendments you've taken. I'm very appreciative of that. I'm also appreciative of your statements, and I believe you when you say you're going to continue working on Section 2 and taking a look at these other sections. So originally I was probably a hard no on this, but I do believe in your intentions, and at the moment I'm going to vote yes for it and keep on watching through the process.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions or comments, Mr. Meinschein, you have an opportunity to close.
Well, thank you all very much for the discussion. As I've said, I'm committed to continue to work on this. I think this is something that's important and significant and would be a step forward, and we'll continue to work on this should this move forward. And I thank you very much again, Mr. Chair, and your staff.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Daly.
Aye.
Daly, aye. Beth Gaines. Travis Allen. Aye. Travis Allen, aye. Calderon. Calderon, aye. Cooley. Aye. Cooley, aye. Cooper. Aye. Cooper, aye. DeBobne. Frazier. Aye. Frazier, aye. Gatto. Gonzalez. Aye. Gonzalez, aye. Grove. Aye. Grove, aye. Mays. Aye. Mays, aye. Rodriguez. Aye. Rodriguez, aye.
So 10 aye votes for that bill.